Hey there, everybody. Welcome to the RocketMSP Podcast. I'm Steve Taylor, your host. Today, I'm joined by Jim Lippy, SaaS Alerts. And if he looks familiar, it's because this isn't a rerun. He was here last week. Jim, thanks for coming back, man.
Steve, thanks for having me back. I had a blast last week, and I'm looking forward to this week.
Me too. So last week we talked all about the platform, the SaaS platform that you guys have built. It's called SaaS Alerts, and just to quickly recap, guys, SaaS Alerts is really freaking cool. It gives you the ability to uh, basically monitor all of your SaaS platforms for your customers and even for your employees for all the internal stuff that you guys use. And you can generate alerts for when something, I'll air quote, bad happens.
Hmm.
And that bad thing that happens could be anything from 2FA being disabled on a user, you get an alert. Or dead shares, or how did you call them? Orphaned shares on
Orphan links,
orphan links. So that kind of stuff in Google Drive or Dropbox,
OneDrive.
or yeah. So definitely check out SaaS Alerts. But today we're going to do something a little different. Today is educational in the let's help you guys have an awesome MSP kind of education.
Yep.
So today we're going to talk about the MSP time machine, what Jim wishes he knew when he started his MSP that he now knows.
Exactly. So, again, thanks, Steve, for having me today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
And, I came up with this idea because we'll get into my background here in a second, but I was thinking about like what I know now that I really wish I could apply back to my MSP. And I wish I had a time machine because, end of the day, who wouldn't want access to a time machine?
I can't think of a single person that's said to themselves, "Man, I my life was perfect. I wouldn't change a thing."
Yeah, exactly. So having a time machine would be awesome. So as I started thinking about all this content, I'm like, you know what? This really is an MSP time machine, at least from my perspective, right? And it's everything I know now. I wish I knew then. And to understand where I'm coming from, it's really important to get an idea what my background is, Steve. So I'm a former MSP CEO. I was CEO of an MSP in Boston, Massachusetts called Thrive Networks. Sold it to Staples back in 2000, at the end of 2006. Ran it for them for another 6 years. By the time I left, I owned a $180 million P&L there. It was the old uh, Easy Tech business, which was basically what Best Buy calls Geek Squad. Um, and then when I left there, I started working with Chip Buck and Seth Bostock, the co-founders of SaaS Alerts. I started working with those guys at another company called Independence IT. And so I was president of Independence IT. That we were pioneers in the desktop as a service space or cloud workspace area. Now you got great companies in there like um, Nerdio and CloudJumper sold to NetApp, but that's a whole different area and helped a lot of companies with that product. Obviously, successful exit, and then I had my own company that I founded called Clarity Channel Advisors, and that's where I helped literally hundreds of MSPs around the world develop a cloud first strategy. And I was doing that for a couple of years, and then that's when Fred Vicola, CEO of Kaseya, found me. And eventually we came to terms where I joined Kaseya, and I was there for 4.5 years as senior vice president and general manager before I left to become CEO of SaaS Alerts. But when you look at my experience, I was an MSP first, and then I got into the software space. And I learned a lot about how to better price, position, package software there and services that I wish I knew back when I had my MSP. Like everything I started learning, at these companies I was at, and specifically Kaseya, I'm like, oh man, if I knew this back when I had my MSP, like we could have done some amazing things. And we did some really great things, but it could have been so much better. And so let's get in a time machine, Steve. So the year's 2005. Okay, I'm CEO of Thrive Networks, and the board comes to me, and I'm a young CEO, and they said, Jim, we want you to focus on growing sales. We want you to build a team for scale, and we want you to do everything you can to mitigate churn. So I'm like, okay. So we looked at every Monday at 10 a.m. We would have a executive management meeting that lasts about 90 minutes. And we would look at roughly 12 to 14 different metrics that we tracked every single week over week. But I'm just going to highlight the four ones that we really focused on. New monthly recurring revenue, churn, project revenue, and employee retention. Because if we're going to build a great team for scale, we got to make sure we're keeping those folks. So I went in, with that mindset. Okay, this is what I'm focusing on. Now, the MSP view of metrics, and after working not only as MSP but working with MSPs for so long, I feel like the way MSPs view metrics are really siloed, specifically when it comes to the sales side of things. So you look at new sales, right? You look at the new monthly recurring revenue you have coming in. And then you look at projects from existing customers, right? And you may have some hardware associated with that as well, right? So you've got your new MRR coming in, then you've got projects from existing customers, which could or may or may not have hardware associated with it. And then in another silo, you look at churn, right? And that is whether people are reducing their monthly commitment to you, or you've completely lost the logo altogether, right? So what do you think, Steve? You think MSPs look at these metrics like this in these types of silos?
Not at all.
Not at all.
Not even a little.
Okay.
And here's my reasoning for saying that. When I look at these, I think MSPs look at new sales, and when I think of new sales, I think MSPs look at, oh, I just picked up another 15 seat, all you can eat client, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's the new sale, and then they'll look at projects as like bonus money,
Yep.
okay, and then the churn they don't think about, they don't plan for. It's completely unexpected. So when it happens, it hurts. They're not ready. They're not prepared. And I heard a metric earlier that I guess doesn't surprise me. I just didn't realize it was that many. Like if you look at in I don't know if it was the world or the US, the number of companies that say they're MSPs that only have like one or two people is like 80% of MSPs.
Yes.
I I don't know if that's true. I just that boggles my mind. And if that's the case, that's why so many MSPs look at this completely wrong.
Mm-hmm. Well, look, first of all, everything you say, I agree with, right? Like in terms of you bring on a new 1,500 agreement, right? That goes in the new sales bucket. Project in a really good MSP is covering their expenses completely with their monthly recurring revenue. And
Mhm.
like you said, projects from existing customers are basically, it's bonus, right? It basically it extends your profit margin. It gives you increased profit.
Well,
And then
it doesn't because those 80% of MSPs, the one or two people shops, um, they find creative ways to have more expenses They don't realize that the more you pay Uncle Sam every year in taxes means that you are more profitable,
Mm-hmm.
right? Their goal is to pay less or even figure out how to get a refund if they've got, the child tax credit or whatever, right?
Right.
So
Right.
they're looking at that extra money as, all right, well, I can get I'll finish the basement, and I'll put that as office construction, and I'll get a new TV and surround sound and Nintendo Switch. We'll call that
Mhm.
research and development, because I got to figure out if I'm going to do tech support for a Nintendo Switch or not. I
Right.
haven't decided yet.
Yeah.
I could totally see people doing this.
Yeah. No question. And I think that, to your original point, you're looking at one, two-person MSPs. Certainly they're doing that. I'm talking about at the time I took over Thrive Networks as CEO, we were 45 employees. By the time we left, we're 90 employees. Um, and it was a pretty established business, right? And we were optimizing for scale,
Hmm.
and that's why we looked at these metrics. And by the way, I'm as guilty as anybody, right? We always looked at these metrics in their own buckets, right? But a software company's view of these metrics are different. Okay. So, for instance, like when I was at Kaseya, we have something called new client acquisition, NCA, right? So that is a new logo. Then we looked at existing customers, right? And most of the revenue actually at a well established software company comes from your existing customer base. Okay. So you're upselling the same product to that customer. They're buying more licenses of the same product. And then if the company has multiple products, you're cross selling those additional products into that customer, right? And so this is recurring customers, existing relationships, all that good stuff. Land and expand. And then the most important metric that a software company looks at and tracks is net retention. So net retention is upsell to existing customers, cross sell to existing customers, minus churn equals net retention. Okay. And this is a number one metric software companies look at. And
Hmm.
my thesis is that there's the difference in how software companies and MSP view metrics make them view their customer base differently. So MSPs view sales and churn separately, with little regard for net retention. I've never heard of an MSP actually talk about net retention. Have you?
No, no. Well, an MSP thinks of retention, not net retention, right?
Exactly.
They think, cool, I got my client to sign another 3-year contract.
Right.
Suckers.
Yeah. So again, a software company's number one metric is net retention, which is why software companies put more of a premium and emphasis on selling more to existing customers. And why does this matter?
It
And
doesn't really.
well, no, I'm gonna show you why. I know you're kidding. Um, so first of all, you know, we'll get into like why it's easier to sell to existing customers. I think it's fairly obvious, but why does it matter? We look at cost of customer acquisition. Okay, this is something else that MSPs really don't talk about, but is a big metric for software companies. Okay, so we're talking about essentially cost of sales here. What does it take to acquire a customer? Okay, so a software company, you know, the cost of sale for a new logo can be anywhere between $1. This is a good software company, right? $1 to $1.50 for every recurring dollar of annual recurring revenue.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what I'm hearing is they spend 1 to 2 months of a year worth of I don't even know what I'm trying to say. They spend 1 to 2 months worth of revenue from each new customer they bring in just to acquire that customer.
Just to acquire the customer.
So if we look at companies that like SaaS alerts,
Mm-hmm.
companies that will do things on a no contract,
Right.
so you just pay for what you use.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that sounds risky.
Yeah. Look, there's a lot that goes in to acquiring a customer, but the bet here is that you're going to have that customer for 3+ years, right?
Mm,
And it all, it'll end up, the return on that investment is big, right?
got it.
So now this is why it matters that you should be looking at net retention, because look at this number. Software companies' cost of sales to existing customers are 10 to 20 cents for every recurring dollar recurring revenue.
I
Annual
I
recurring.
like that. I
Yeah.
like that a lot better.
Yeah, exactly. So let's just say, for the sake of this conversation, Steve, right? Like you've purchased our core package at SaaS Alerts, right? And you've got 1,000 users on our platform at 50 cents a user. You're spending $500 a month with us. You're catching great information. You're happy. Everything's cool, right? Like, and I'm more than happy that we spent, the $1 to $1.50 acquiring you as a customer. Now,
Mm,
let's just say a year later, we come out with a new service or an additional package to add on to what you're currently buying from us, right? It only costs us 10 to 20 cents for every recurring dollar of annual recurring revenue to sell that product to you.
and let's be honest, if if you have a lot of those 80% as customers, which you probably should have all of the 80% as customers based on what SaaS Alerts does. He's not paying me to say that. Um, I would say that. Do you have any hypothetical features or upgrades that you guys are looking to launch maybe in like 2 years or something?
Yeah, not even. So eventually, like probably, I'm guessing 6 to 9 months from now, we'll have some basic remediation um, features in the product, right?
And
So
that's not going to be 50 cents a user.
that won't be 50 cents a user.
And you know what? If I can do the alerting and the remediation from the exact same platform, why wouldn't I consider it? So all
Right,
you have to do is send me an email.
right,
So
right.
is it even 10 to 20 cents?
It is because I also have an account manager that will be managing your account, and they'll be letting you know and taking you through it, and it all evens out. So the cost of that account manager is allocated to that cost of sale.
Okay. Okay.
But the good news is, right? Like the account manager is going to be managing 200 total MSP partners. So it's obviously spread out over a large base. Um, so, but it's a much more cost effective way of growing your revenue when you're selling to existing customers, right? That's the bottom line here.
Yes, it is.
And as an MSP, I ask people all the time, do you know the cost of sales to new or existing customers?
Not even a little bit.
Right.
Not a
I've
little
never
bit.
come. There's only been a handful of MSPs in my lifetime that have been able to even remotely come close to telling me what their cost of sale is.
I know of two, maybe three, that could probably tell me what the cost is for them to bring on one of their more recent customers.
Mm-hmm.
But for the most part, completely unknown. And in fact, I know one guy, like, he'll spend a few hours a week at my recommendation, because he was looking for ways to um, expand his reach, right?
Right.
So now he spends a few hours a week, like, making these really awesome videos. He'll put them up everywhere, and that has helped get him additional visibility and brand recognition, which ultimately I think has helped him land a few new clients.
Hmm.
But do we know that the investment of his time, which, every person within an organization, even the owner, has a burden cost, right? Do we know what his actual burden cost was? One. And
Hmm.
two, do we know if that burden cost that he has spent on these videos, on marketing, have actually resulted in anything positive? We don't.
Yeah.
We truly don't. We think so, but we really don't know.
Yep. Yep. So I challenge MSPs to start doing the work to understand these costs, because that data can be very, very helpful in terms of how you run your business. So then we turn to the ease of selling, right? So from my perspective, the number one issue selling a customer, first of all, let's just take a step back for a second. I think the one thing that holds most MSPs back from scale is sales,
Mm-hmm.
right? And getting a sales engine consistently working to be bringing in leads and to be bringing in closed business, right? And I think the number one issue selling a solution to a company is trust, right? How do I get the company across the table from me to trust me with their most valuable asset, which is their data, right? They're going to give me the keys to the kingdom. And when you think about it, it's like what we do in managed services is, for the most part, intangible, right? Like you can't touch what we do for a customer, right? You can see different pieces here and there of the value that you're providing, but ultimately, when you think about the core of a managed service offering, right? Like I'm going to put agents and probes in your environment, and they're going to report back to our network operations center and our help desk, and we got smart people back at the office that are looking at the information from those agents and probes, and we're going to remediate any issues before they become major end user problems, right? The customer never sees that, so they have to trust that we really do have smart people back in an office looking at this information and remediating issues before they manifest in end user problems. But here's a great thing about selling to existing customers. They already trust us. We've already sold them
Yeah,
once.
absolutely. Yeah.
And if we've demonstrated that we've done a good job for them, guess what? We can leverage that trust into additional dollars, additional services that we can sell them. And I used to do these, what we called IT complete calls at Kaseya. They're basically what you might, MSP would call a quarterly business review. And I would take an MSP partner through essentially what our roadmap is, at Kaseya from a software perspective, and then tell them what we have existing right now that they could be taking advantage of that they're not. Like, okay, Mr. and Mrs. Customer, we've got 24 different SKUs, 26 different SKUs here at Kaseya. You're currently buying 2. But do you need backup? Is cloud backup important to you? Or okay, you're using somebody else? Well, how's that going for you? What's the price point? Here's what we can do. Though we consistently had those calls, right? And I know MSPs do, they're supposed to be doing their quarterly business reviews. A lot of them don't. A lot of them have difficulties trying to get people to take those meetings because they just feel like it's a sales pitch. So you need to be creative in terms of how you do them. But, ultimately, there's a trusted relationship there that allows you to sell more to an existing customer that I think MSPs need to take more advantage of. I can tell you, Steve, now that we're in the time machine, I would go back in time as a CEO of an MSP, and I would mandate that we spend a lot more time from an account management perspective selling more to existing customers. And I can tell you that what we used to do is we would come up with an idea, something that we think would be good for the customer, and we would take it to them once, and they would say, "Nah, I don't think so." And that was it. That was it.
Yeah.
They said no. Okay, let's pack it up, go home. They're not interested. But that's not the way you prospect. Like everyone will tell you from a prospecting perspective, it takes 7 or 8 touches. There's no way MSPs are touching their existing customers 7 or 8 times with the same product. And you might say, oh, well, that just comes across as pushy or whatever. You need to get creative in terms of how you're presenting the information. It's not just, you're jamming it down their throat every single time with a hard pitch. It's let's do a lunch and learn. Okay, to learn, to educate, right? I can send you some reports, right? MFA is not for you. You keep telling me that, but you know what? I just got I just ran a new risk report from SaaS Alerts, and I can show you where all of the bad actors in the world are trying to get into your 365 accounts.
I have something. I don't know if you noticed. Started laughing, but it's because I was going to try and make an analogy that selling things is like asking a girl out. If you really like her, you might have to ask a few times or something, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then you were like, it takes 7 or 8 touches, and I'm like, well, that needs consent these days. And then you're like something about jamming it down their throats. I'm like, nope, I can't. Nope, not.
Yeah, it's good you held back, Steve.
Oh boy. So yes, with that, I love that you would go back in the time machine, and it sounds like what you're really saying is you'd go back in time and you would tell yourself, don't take no for an answer. No,
Well,
no means maybe. No means
yeah,
try
well,
harder.
I would say, look, we have a good product that makes sense for this customer,
Sure.
right? And they've said no, okay, but start digging in why, and then start presenting that information in a different way, because ultimately it's our job as their trusted advisor to make sure they truly understand the risk associated with inaction,
Hmm.
and just continue to work the problem, if you will. Which leads me to better conversions on selling to prospects, right? Because this is the other thing I would do. I would, back in my time machine, I would go back and I'd be like, we need to walk out of a sales meeting with something. But
Yeah, that's
instead,
never good.
but instead, our approach back then was all or nothing. I'm going to walk
Yeah.
in, Steve, and I'm going to pitch you our managed services platform. And I'm going to walk out, probably not that day, right? Obviously. But I'm going to either, at some point in the next 45 days, I'm going to get you as a managed services customer, or I'm going to get 0.
Right. And that, I understand why people want that approach because they think, they need to hold the keys to the castle and and be the end all be all everything, right?
Right.
But that takes a lot of trust.
Yep.
So maybe just getting your foot in the door and doing something simple would be a great way for you to get in there, start building that trust, and then giving them the upsells and cross sells.
Exactly. Exactly. So, you know, we would, and look, again, the reason I would go back in a time machine and do all this differently now is because I did it wrong the first time. Now granted, we had a really successful outcome and a good, strong MSP, but it could have been so much better if we had done some of these things differently. So again, we would go in, pitch the managed services suite. It was all or nothing, 0 or $5,000 a month. Like, but here's the thing: I know back then, I remember we were spending $300 per lead per meeting.
Wow,
Yeah,
that's a lot just to get a meeting
just to
with
get a meeting.
no guarantee. And do you know what your close rate was?
It depends on the channel it came from.
Ooh,
If it was a cold call,
hmm.
we were at 10%. If it
Okay.
was pay per click advertising, right? Which back then, this is 2005 ish, talking about. It's not everyone was doing pay per click advertising. Um, our close rates were 25%.
Nice.
So, and then we had everything in between. We had email marketing, we had networking, we had
And the
um,
craziest thing is, back in 2005, Facebook wasn't even a thing. You were advertising on MySpace, man.
not quite. We were. It was all Google AdWords back then, but we were allocating anywhere between $5,000 to $7,000 a month for our Google AdWord budget.
That's a great budget too.
Um,
It will do you practically nothing these days, but
yeah, exactly. I mean, it's just gotten so competitive, right? But the $300 was completely worth it. We would, on average, we would go in about 30 new prospect meetings a month.
I mean, that is more than a meeting a day when you consider there's going to be at least 8 weekend days.
Yep, exactly. Yeah,
So
on
that's
average, you're looking
phenomenal.
at 20 to 21 actual selling days in a month that you can be out meeting with people. So, but we had a team, and we looked at leading indicators like we wanted 30 prospect meetings a month. Some months we fell short; it was like 25 or whatever. Some months we exceeded, but this was a really important metric for us because then we could forecast properly, and we knew exactly where close rates were and all that stuff. But with all that, and I think we were pretty sophisticated back then for what we were doing, we still took this all or nothing approach. And when you take this approach, it creates sales friction. Okay. And sales friction is bad. Okay.
Usually,
Yes. Okay. Based on, and we did this, it was based on cost and a myriad of other variables, right? Like, okay, I'm asking you to make a $5,000 commitment to us, and um, who knows what else is going on, that we don't have any control over, right, in the sales process. So we were adding, by taking this all or nothing approach, we're adding a lot of friction into our own sales process. Software companies take a different approach. Most software companies, they just want to get the ball in play. And what do I mean by that? Just like what you said before, just get your
trial.
foot in the door. Exactly. Reduce friction with freemium licenses, trials, low cost licenses, fewer licenses, right? You've got 100 employees. Let's try it out on 20 and do a test and see how those 20 like it. Then we can expand. Those are all things that software companies have at their disposal. So this approach actually reduces the friction and reduces the number of variables in your sales process.
So true.
So what I would go back and do is say, let's get some products that are great wedge products. They're not going to cost a lot to deploy. They're not going to cost a lot to maintain. And they're not going to cost the customer a lot to buy.
That's a good. And what would you say to the people that are like, you know what? Let's give everyone that we talk to that isn't ready to buy something yet, we'll just install our agents on all their computers and we'll do monitoring at no charge because
No
we've
way,
got
Jose.
Synchro or something. So we get unlimited endpoints. Why wouldn't we want to just monitor all the computers in my county?
Because lots of times people don't value things you give away for free.
Yes. So what do I
So if
charge
you're
for
willing to
that?
do it for free now, why are you going to charge me later?
Because you want me to do the actual work, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. Right now, I just get a little pop up that says you got a problem.
Right.
You want me to fix it, or you just
Mm-hmm.
want to know that there's a problem?
Yeah. So generally, I'm not a fan of that. And by the way, they still need to trust you to a certain degree because you're going to put agents and probes in their environment, and you're giving them, important, key passwords to, different pieces of infrastructure and so forth. So, that can get dicey because now you're also taking on liability at no cost.
Yeah, that's true. Because I mean, hypothetically, if you were using Kaseya
Yep.
and you were doing free monitoring,
Yep.
guess what? You just hosed that
Mm.
company who's
Right.
technically not even a client because they've never changed money
Right.
with you.
Yep. Yep. And now they could potentially sue you.
Yay, my
Right.
favorite, getting
So
sued.
I'm not a fan of that approach. Right. Now, assessments, things that are, one-time deals, again, easy to deploy, easy to, low cost or no cost. Okay, I can get behind something like that, but not free ongoing monitoring or support.
What about like a 30-day trial?
Here's the thing with MSPs, and it's again, this is one big advantage that software companies have over service companies. It's tough to trial a service for 30 days.
You're right. We're just going to make it 7.
Yeah. you know, so that's the difficult part there. And also, you're inheriting a lot of crap when you take on a new customer. And sometimes, let's face it, the first 90 days of taking on a new managed services customer can be a little rocky.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
So you're not necessarily putting yourself in the best position to succeed by taking that approach.
So, what if I just sell them DNS filter?
Okay. That's a good one, right? Inexpensive, easy to deploy, get your foot in the door. Um,
And then their computer gets hacked and they blame you, right?
well, I mean, obviously there are parameters in your master services agreement and all that stuff, right? But
Mm.
this is where expectations are really, really key, making sure that we're setting proper expectations around every service that we're selling.
Wait, guys, I think I've figured out the thing that we should be selling them. We
What's
should
that?
sell them uh this like we should find a way to monitor all of the SaaS tools that they use. That way we can let them know if they have any issues that need to be taken care of. And then for an additional fee, we can just take care of the issues.
See if you might be onto something here.
Yeah.
Let's go through the rest of the presentation and see if anything like that comes up.
Okay.
So the last thing I would say around going back in my time machine, and this isn't really specific to software per se, it's urgency.
Mm.
As a leader of any business, I don't think you can have enough of it. Why? Because, and this is something I learned in my software business or my software experience. Urgency is just naturally diluted as it filters down through an organization, right? So let's just say you're a leader, and on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the highest, your level of urgency is a 5. By the time it dilutes down to frontline folks throughout the organization, the level of urgency declines to like a 1 or a 2. Right?
Got it.
That's a problem.
Because they don't care.
Right. But if you are at a 10 as a leader, even if it naturally is going to dilute as it goes through the organization, still you could have people at a 5 or a 6, which is a whole lot better than a 1 or a 2.
That's true.
Right. And to amplify this point, I think about, if you're an MSP, think about this and be really critical and truthful with yourself. What is your attitude about the end of the quarter? Like, are you pushing really, really hard at the end of a quarter to get every last dollar of monthly recurring revenue in, to sign as many deals as you possibly can?
I mean, why would we feel like we have to do that at the end of a quarter? Shouldn't we do that like every day?
Well, you should doing it every day, but ultimately, when you bracket it, right, and we look at like SMART goals, which is timely as a part of that, we need to focus on a specific time period, right? And a quarter is a good benchmark around that, right? I can tell you, Steve, the difference between software companies' end of a quarter and an MSP's end of the quarter, based on personal experience, are vastly different.
Okay.
Software companies are like balls to the wall. We got to get this in at the end of the quarter. We have quarterly goals that need to be met. We got to get it in.
Yeah,
right.
I recognize that from all the times that you people call me and you're like, "Hey, Steve, we got this deal going on right now. You should sign up."
Exactly right. Okay, there's a
We'll
reason.
even waive the onboarding fees and give you a ramp for your first 3 months. But you have to sign today.
Exactly, Steve. You got it. You could go work for a software company. So this is a big difference between MSPs and software companies. MSPs, my experience is like, well, there are now some that are private equity backed, that focus on getting that, that are have a lot more urgency around the end of a quarter and making sure that they get their sales numbers in. I mean, because let's face it, if we understand monthly recurring revenue, the more monthly recurring revenue we sign earlier in the year, the better off the entire year is. Right. So time is really important. It is our most valuable asset.
Okay. I see where you're going here. Now you look at things when comparing an MSP and a software company, but like you've now been at more than one software company.
Correct.
So have all of these software companies roughly operated the same way?
More or less, there was always, quarterly goals were really, really important. And there was, always a lot more urgency at the software companies I've worked at to hit the quarter than MSPs.
And then,
but there's degrees, right? Obviously.
And then before you came on to SaaS Alerts, you've already had the experience as an MSP and at a software company, especially a large, successful software company.
Right.
So with that, you were able to bring some invaluable experience. to SaaS alerts.
I would hope so. Definitely, bring a fair amount of experience and some things to do and what not to do.
And I
And
also suspect, how many employees are there? Like half a dozen, something like that.
yeah, about a dozen right now of us.
So I suspect there's got to be at least half a dozen people right now that absolutely can't stand you because you've got all these weird rules and policies and paperwork and forms and whatever else, like, but that's because you know what works. Would you say that's probably fair?
I don't think there's a half dozen people that can't stand me, because the only thing I'll say is this: try to be as reasonable as possible. Yes, I understand the importance of process and documentation and all those things that contribute to scale. At the same time, I also recognize that I don't want to get in the way of productivity. I don't want to get one of the things I say all the time, and I'm not the one that invented this, but I certainly believe it, which is don't let perfection get in the way of progress.
Okay.
So I say that to people all the time. So I don't mind making mistakes, but let's make them. If we're going to make a mistake, let's make it fast, learn, and move on.
Okay. Cool.
So that's my bit about urgency. So if I had a time machine, let's review. I would focus on selling new products to existing customers. I would not give up on the first attempt. Okay. I'm gonna essentially treat my existing customer like a prospect and run campaigns and so forth around these new services. I would focus on net retention because I think that's going to change certain behaviors in your organization. I would use wedge products or use them more to penetrate prospects. So I'm not taking all or nothing approach. I'm walking out. If I'm going to spend $300 in a meeting, I'm going to walk out with something. I'm going to get an agreement, or at the end of that sales process, maybe I get $100 a month to monitor their SaaS applications, right? And then focus on creating more urgency. As a leader in an organization, definitely focus on the level of urgency throughout the organization because time is really, really important. You don't get it back. So what's next? Every time I do a presentation, I want to make sure people are taking something practical back to the office. So I would huddle up with your management team, decide to focus on selling more to existing customers. In order to do that, I would identify the most important new product categories to your customers. Like what is going on right now within our customer base that needs to be addressed, right? And let's find a solution that meets that need. So what are they willing to buy right now? Find products that can be used to sell to existing customers and as a wedge to prospects. So essentially killing two birds with one stone. And then identify what the total addressable market is. So TAM, we use the word TAM all the time in the software business, within the existing customer base that you have with a new product, and develop a sales plan around it. So I'll give you an example. Back when I was at my MSP, this has got to be 2009, 2010. We worked with a backup company called Axient. Probably a lot of people know Axient. They were kind of like the data before data was data. We were the largest reseller of data in the country at one point. That's
Data
right.
or Axient?
Yeah. So we were doing about $60,000 a month in backup with Axient.
Wow.
And the reason we were doing that was because we made a really conscious effort. We said, look, we want everyone that is using, it's kind of funny to think about now, everyone that's using tape backup, we want off of tape backup, we want onto cloud-based backup with Axient. We didn't call it Axient. They didn't know it was Axient. We called it Thrive Protect. We called it Thrive Safe and Thrive Save. We had two different versions. And our goal was to get every one of the customers on it. Why? Because we saw it was much easier to support, like tape backups back in the day, very time consuming and doing the test restores and all that. So that was a big motivator for us. It was just going to be operationally more efficient, and obviously, the monthly recurring revenue from it was important. So we looked at our existing customer base and came up with a plan about how we were going to attack our customer base with that specific product, and it worked really, really well. And it took us 18 to 24 months, but we did it, and we gave out spiffs to salespeople and engineering teams and stuff around it. And it was like kind of like a celebration every time we got one of those contracts in the door.
That's really nice. Now, I might have called it the backup solution Protect and Thrive.
So it's interesting because our core managed services package back then was Thrive Protect. And then we had a lower tier version of that called Thrive Essentials.
Well, I probably would have called the one that does everything automatically for you. I would have called it Thrive Automate.
Mm-hmm.
No, I would have called it Thrive Manage.
Okay.
And the one that you use to manage everything, I would have called that one Thrive Automate.
Huh. Where have I heard that before, Steve?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Weird, right?
Don't let anyone ever tell you you're not a marketing genius.
Yeah. I just thought it would be really cool to like take both of those and flip them completely backwards. So that way nobody ever knows if you're talking about one of them or the other, because they always get it confused.
Yeah.
Even later.
Exactly. So, Steve, this leads me to some recommendations for people. Some practical recommendations people can take back to the office as they're decided that they're going to do some of these things via this time machine. SaaS alerts. Bam. So we're going to come up with a product, right, that we're going to use as a wedge for new prospects and a great product for existing customers. So first of all, we're solving a problem, which is something that's pretty pervasive still for MSPs, which is the traditional support model, managing small business on-prem application servers being accessed by company-owned devices on company-managed networks. Those days are gone, man. We know that. And we're now in a situation where we're managing, our customers shift to SaaS applications, and these SaaS applications are usually being accessed by personal devices and open networks, which create a massive security gap and also decrease our revenue at the same time.
Well, not only that, but a lot of people don't have company phones, so now they're being told that they need to set up 2FA, and how else are they going to do it other than with their own personal phone?
Right. Yep. Exactly. So some really specific use cases that we see, Steve. Use case number one, and literally we see this every single day in our customer base or partner base, right, with MSPs and their end user customers. Someone falls victim, end user customer falls victim to a phishing campaign, and now a bad actor has legit credentials to their 365 instance.
Well, that would never happen to any of
us. Never. So now someone's logging in from China and to a company that's based out of Pasadena, California. It's a 10-person company. Like, they have no business in China, no users in China. Why is someone logging in from China? It's because a bad actor has credentials. If we're monitoring from a SaaS security perspective, we can pick that up. So use case number two, users connect to multiple application servers using their primary corporate credentials. So this is a situation where every third-party SaaS application on the planet wants to use your 365 or Google Workspace credentials to log into their app because it makes
Yeah,
it easier.
it's super easy. Why wouldn't I do that?
Exactly. Well, the problem here is it widens the threat vector,
Well,
right?
that's why I actually I use Google for some of them, and then I use Facebook for some of them.
Wow, you're that's good diversification there, Steve.
Yeah,
Yeah. So,
security's like an onion.
yep, yep. So as we do that, obviously we widen the threat vector because if you get into one application, now you can get into all, right? So that's a use case that we see all the time. We're trying to mitigate. You should be trying to mitigate on behalf of your customers by monitoring this. And then the third one, and you alluded to this off the top, Steve, is orphan links. So you've got users out there sharing information back and forth via OneDrive, Dropbox, G Drive, whatever it is, and they're done sharing information with a specific individual at another company. Project's over, but the link still exists. No one terminates these links. No one configures it right to terminate. So what SaaS Alerts does is we alert the MSP, hey, look, there's an orphan link out there. It's been dormant for more than 30 days. Work with a customer to terminate that.
But who really cares about the orphan link?
Who
I
really
mean,
cares about what?
who really cares about that orphan link? I mean,
Bad
what are they gonna
actors who
do?
can
Sit
find
on a
it.
spreadsheet? Like, come on, man.
Yeah, the problem is nobody cares, and it's a major security gap.
Yeah, it's not a big deal. It's just a spreadsheet, Jim.
Yeah, that no one will end up looking at and doing anything with. You're right. That's a great idea.
Yeah, I mean, it was just the list of all the customers at one of my competitors that I just kind of happened upon, and that's all it is. Why do I care if that's shared out
Hmm.
from my Google Drive? You don't
Yeah,
even have words.
you know, your sarcasm sometimes just is just too much to overcome. Um, but in terms of, first of all, you're hitting. I know you're doing it with Jess, but it is a really important piece of information for people to understand, like how dangerous having these links all over the place are, right?
Hmm.
Um, and it's our jobs as MSPs to be able to work with our end users to make sure that they're not going to become problems down the road.
So,
Um,
so let me ask you a serious question, Jim.
yeah,
So let's say I've got a couple of spreadsheets, like actual spreadsheets,
yeah.
because I have one. It's the RMM comparison chart, and it's now turned into the MSP comparison chart because it's got all these different um, sheets on
Hmm.
in the overall book, right? So one for RMMs, one for PSAs. I'm sure there's one for a SaaS thing too. You should get your info on. Like, is there actual danger to having that read only shared forever and ever for every MSP to get?
That spreadsheet specifically.
Yes. Not a folder of stuff, just that spreadsheet.
It's got all the contact information, and everything on it.
No.
Are you sharing it? How many people are you sharing out with? And have you configured it to terminate after a certain period of time?
It's configured to allow anonymous access for read only.
Mm. Anything with anonymous access is generally not a good idea.
So, can you explain why?
Because you have no idea who's looking and who's sharing.
But if it's something that I've put out there for anyone to look at.
Hmm.
It's, it's not hidden behind a paywall. It's something that I want people
You want
to
people to
go out.
see?
I want people to go out and see it.
It's kind of, so it's almost like it's something you put on a website.
Yeah.
Yeah, then that's fine.
Okay. So there's not a security risk with them like getting into that spreadsheet and then like hacking their way into the rest of my drive. It's more or less a privacy and intellectual property type thing that you're more worried about when it comes to some of these documents being shared, correct?
Yeah, but also it depends on the individual application and the configurations of the end user in terms of, you know, what like you have. I'm sure you have yours locked down, but there
Hmm.
most end users don't,
Yeah,
and that's
that's true, and that's so so for the people that know how to create these links and they have specific reasons for wanting them out in the public, that's okay as
right.
long as they're doing it correctly with maybe read-only access and that type of stuff. But for people that have no idea what they're doing with these share links and putting it out on Facebook, hey Bill, can you check this out? But not using Messenger, just like writing it on his wall. And now you've got all these people looking at this thing and then sharing it with their friends, and eventually somebody that shouldn't look at it gets it. That's when it becomes a
Yeah,
problem.
a major issue, right? And let's face it, 99% of end users out there, all they want to do is get their job done as fast as possible. They have really very little concern for security hygiene. I mean, they
Hmm.
view that as IT's job. But
Well, yeah. I mean, I understand that perspective. It does make it incredibly difficult for us to do our job, though.
exactly, which is why it needs to be monitored.
Fair.
So, yeah.
So
And
I
look,
see you've got a little problem in the headlines here too.
yeah, yeah. So this, look, we all know about the solar winds situation, right? But they've confirmed that 365 was played a really big role in that, which is why we go super deep on Microsoft, and SolarWinds has come out and basically said, look, their plan going forward is to boost ongoing monitoring and inspection of SaaS tools. So these guys have gone through the
Good for
biggest
them.
breach in the history of the world, and they're coming out and saying, hey, look, we need to start looking at suspicious user activity, and we're going to start doing that around SaaS, um, based on their knowledge of what happened with 365.
Good for them. And we're not going to say what they should or shouldn't have done before anything happened. I just say good for them for at least learning from this and being proactive about trying to prevent it in the future.
Exactly, exactly. So this is an interesting chart because the information on the right hand side of the screen is from Blissfully, and it shows an 18-person organization connecting to 81 different applications. So each one of these lines represents an app to person connection. It's 400 different connections. That is just that is a traffic jam with all sorts of major security implications right there.
Dude, that is crazy.
Right.
And
So
and all those little it looks like the inside of a 2001 computer that I didn't actually know what I was doing when I wired it all up.
could be. I'll take your word for it. So according to Okta, this is all the information on the left. 36% of 365 users also use Google Workspace, which I mean that's a pretty big number. I was a little shocked by it. 42% of users also use Zoom and Slack, even though that functionality exists in Teams.
Right.
So there is a lot of you know application crossover, and one of the things you should be doing, or monitoring solutions should be doing, is what we do at SaaS Alerts, is we actually correlate the usage across multiple SaaS applications. Because if you're just looking at a single SaaS tenant, it can show you what's going on and again in a silo, but not what it's doing from a correlation standpoint. So, Steve, again, if you were logging in to 365 from, New Jersey at 9 a.m. Eastern time, and then you were logging in from Los Angeles, California, an hour later, it's not physically possible, right? But if you're just looking at 365 tenant and you're just looking at Salesforce tenant, that looks normal. The power is the fact, like, we're able to say, wait a minute, we're looking at this, we're correlating it, and this is physically impossible. This is an alert. I'm informing the MSP so they can do something about it.
Now, I've just got to say this gorgeous abomination on your slide here, is this something that you guys did, or is this blissfully?
So this is Blissfully's chart, and we just thought it's really well done, and I think it explains a lot. And then the information on the left here, this is Okta's information.
Well, I think, just going to throw this out there, if you guys were to make a report that did something similar to this chart, I think that would be super nifty.
So it's funny you say that, Steve, because we do have something called the SASE report. SASE is SASI, stands for SaaS Application Security Insights. It's our own report that we put out there. You can go on our website, you can go on LinkedIn, and you can download it for free. And just go to LinkedIn, look up SaaS alerts, you'll find it. It's basically we at the time, from January until end of May, we had 105 MSPs on the platform, and they had a total of about 750 customers that they brought on, representing about 30,000 users. So we anonymize all that data and we put it into a report. And so you can now see, like, for instance, we're seeing 3,000 brute force attacks every single day off of 30,000 users. We go through it, and it's real data. It's not survey data, anything like that. And I think it's pretty helpful for the MSP to be able to take this information back to their customers, because it's all small businesses. It's small business data.
And I just want to make sure that we're on the same page. So that SASE report,
Yep.
I want to be able to create one of those for one of my clients, which is in SaaS Alerts.
Yep, you can do that.
Okay. So it has all that cool data and fun charts and all that?
Yep, absolutely.
That's perfect.
Yep.
And I have a recommendation for another trip in the time machine in the future.
Okay.
Service delivery.
Service delivery?
Yeah. Knowing what you know now, how would you change how you delivered services at the MSP? Or the other way to look at it is, how would you recommend the 80% be doing the service delivery?
That's a good topic.
Mm-hmm.
That's something we can definitely address. In the meantime, we can talk about how to implement a solution like SaaS alerts to your existing customers, right? Because we talked in the time machine about going back and saying, okay, I'm going to blanket my customers with something that I think is useful for them, that is going to add value. So we have something called the covered extension notification. This is an example. Literally, it's an opt-out situation. We're seeing people that are using it, 12 to 15% of MSP's customers are actually opting out of this. So, let's just say you've got 100 customers, you're going to get 85 customers that are now adopting a new solution because you've come to them with this type of solution.
This is actually genius. I love this. And this is something that we could do with any service.
Yes, absolutely.
We decide we want to add a new cybersecurity anything to our arsenal, and stop being worried about either A, having to eat that cost and have less profitability across your clients, tenants, whatever, and B, stop being worried about asking them permission to charge them more.
Hmm.
Ask them to tell you they don't want it.
Right.
Just go with it and have them tell you, no, no, I don't want this.
Hmm.
How easy is that, guys? Seriously.
We've done all the work for you. We've written it.
Yeah, which makes it even easier. Can you imagine if every MSP vendor wrote one of these for MSPs? How much easier life would be?
Mm, yeah, it would.
Yeah.
So we actually, we allow you to customize all the reporting inside the application. We've got a bunch of templates like this from a marketing standpoint, one pagers, you put your logo on. Look, other people do that stuff, but this specifically taking this approach, I think for this specific service, right? Because again, we only charge 50 cents per user per month to the MSP. So it is low cost and it's something
Really
that you can put
is.
on everybody and make a big impact value wise to the customer and then recurring revenue wise if you get all your users on it.
Yeah, this is honestly, this is a no-brainer, man.
So then you can also prospect with this, Steve. Again, we're killing two birds with one stone. We've got a low cost, entry point solution important for customers and now for prospecting too, something to get in the door, right? So you can you can show them the risk report and you can take them through, hey, this is what we're showing our customers. This is an insight that we have. Here's a report. If you want, I can run one for you and see what shows up.
And the coolest thing is, we could show them just the overall SaaS alerts report to show them how much data overall that we are able to correlate everything with, because you guys are using the data from all the users that you guys
Exactly.
manage to
Yep.
learn and understand more.
Exactly. Exactly. So, we can show you all this information. It's actually, the reports are really nice inside the application. We went through that last week. So, Steve, ultimately, again, if I were to go back and do this, and I had a time machine, I was CEO of an MSP, I would really focus on, what products can I be selling to my existing customers and then leveraging those as wedges into my prospects. And, hopefully, this time machine exercise was helpful for your audience.
I thought it was helpful. I mean, some of this seemed like, duh, but it's nice to get that reminder, like the refresher.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for this, Jim. Um, I know I will be taking some of this and figuring out how to use it for my companies, and I can't wait to have you back someday so we can look at service delivery.
Okay.
I'm
Sounds
sure you'll
good.
I'm sure you'll have a neat way to turn the service delivery thing into a pitch for SaaS alerts too, right?
I'm going to start thinking about it right now.
Guys, seriously, check out SaaS alerts. It's really cool. It seems really important for all of us, and I think the smaller your MSP is, probably even more important SaaS alerts is, just because the likelihood that you're able to do everything and read a bunch of logs, probably not going to happen. So go get it. SaaSalerts.com.
Yes.
Cool.
Steve, remember, cover your SaaS.
Yeah. Back that SaaS up. wrong one, right?
Yeah, it's okay. It's all good.
It's all good, man. Cool. All right, everybody. I will catch you all at the next episode of the Rocket MSP Podcast. Thanks for being here and enjoy the rest of your week. Take care, Jim.
Thanks, Steve.